Here is a generation that grew up between the record store and the MTV screen, and they carry a particular map of music that no algorithm has ever fully redrawn. Generation X inherited punk's fury, new wave's cool, and grunge's honesty, and along the way they claimed dozens of bands that younger listeners have simply never found. If that world still lives somewhere in the back of your memory, and if music from the late 70s through the mid-90s shaped who you are, then consider subscribing to Golden America, where we dig into exactly these corners of American culture every single week. Here are 10 bands only true Gen X fans will actually remember. Number 10. Fishbone.
Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
By the early 1980s, the Los Angeles club scene was full of sounds colliding with each other, but nothing collided quite like Fishbone. The band formed in junior high school in Los Angeles around 1979, and by the time they signed their first record deal, they had fused ska, funk, punk, heavy metal, and soul into something that could not be categorized and therefore could not be easily sold. Their 1985 debut EP hit like a thunderclap on college radio. Albums like Truth and Soul and The Reality of My Surroundings earned them a devoted following and the respect of nearly every major rock musician of the era. They toured relentlessly and were known as one of the most physically explosive live acts on any stage. But mainstream radio never figured out where to put them, and without a clear commercial lane, they were gradually crowded out. Gen X fans knew exactly who they were. Everyone else mostly missed it. Number 9. Husker Du. Out of Minneapolis in the early 1980s, Husker Du rewrote the rules of what punk could sound like, and how loud guitars could carry genuine emotion. Bob Mould and Grant Hart shared songwriting and vocal duties, and that creative tension produced something extraordinary. Albums like Zen Arcade and New Day Rising arrived like dispatches from a different universe, melodic and devastating at the same time. They were one of the first American hardcore acts to sign with a major label, landing at Warner Brothers in 1986. But the mainstream never quite absorbed them. Internal conflict, personal struggles, and the band's uncompromising sound made a radio hit essentially impossible. They broke up in 1987 without a proper farewell. What they left behind became foundational material for an entire generation of alternative musicians who openly cited them as the reason they picked up a guitar in the first place. Number 8. Screaming Trees. Long before Seattle became a synonym for grunge, a band from Ellensburg, Washington was already doing something quieter and stranger and harder to explain. Screaming Trees formed in the mid-1980s and spent years making records that leaned into psychedelia, country, and raw noise simultaneously. Mark Lanigan's voice was bottomless, one of the great instruments of the era. Their album Sweet Oblivion, released in 1992, gave them a brief surge of visibility. The single Nearly Lost You appeared on the singles soundtrack and reached a wider audience than anything they had done before. But the band was perennially overshadowed by their Seattle contemporaries, and their catalog never reached the audience it deserved. Lanigan went on to a long solo career and extensive collaborations before his death in 2022. Among those who knew the Trees, he was always the real thing. Number 7. The Church. Make me laugh. They only make me feel like dying. From Sydney, Australia, The Church arrived in the United States in the early 1980s, carrying a sound that felt ancient and immediate at the same time. Swirling guitars, Steve Kilby's low murmuring voice, and an atmosphere that sat somewhere between dream and dread made them a college radio staple for years before anyone paid mainstream attention.
Wish I knew what you were looking for.
Then came Under the Milky Way in 1988. The song became one of the defining pieces of music of that decade, patient and aching, and unlike anything else on the radio. The album Starfish went gold in the United States, which almost no one remembers. The Church continued making records through the following decades with little commercial support and enormous artistic commitment. Gen X fans who caught them at their peak hold them with a particular reverence that has never dimmed.
Leads you here, despite your destination.
Number 6. Concrete Blonde. Johnette Napolitano had one of the most distinctive voices in American alternative rock, and Concrete Blonde built a devoted audience through the late 1980s on the strength of that voice alone. The Los Angeles band released Bloodletting in 1990, and the song Joey became something of an anthem, a slow, brutally honest account of loving someone trapped in addiction.
'Cause if I seem to be confused, I didn't mean to be with you.
The song cracked the top 40, which felt almost accidental given how unguarded and raw it was. Bloodletting sold well enough to qualify as a genuine commercial success, but the band operated in a space that defied easy marketing. They broke up and reformed multiple times over the years. Gen X fans, particularly those who came of age in the early 90s alternative scene, knew every word of that record. The band never got the sustained recognition their talent warranted, but the fans they earned were absolutely loyal. Before we get to the top 5, drop a comment and let us know where you are watching from. It is always great to hear from the Golden America community, wherever you happen to be tuning in. Number 5. 10,000 Maniacs. Natalie Merchant had a presence on stage and on record that was simply difficult to look away from, and through the mid to late 1980s, 10,000 Maniacs built a reputation as one of the most thoughtful bands in American alternative music. Their albums, In My Tribe and Blind Man's Zoo, found large audiences through MTV and college radio, and songs like the Weather and What's the Matter Here placed them at the center of a generation's cultural conversation. Merchant left the band in 1993 to pursue a solo career, which also produced genuinely beloved work. The band continued under various configurations. Their 1993 MTV Unplugged performance remains a touchstone, because the night in particular a kind of farewell in disguise. For Gen X listeners who followed them from the beginning, 10,000 Maniacs felt like they were speaking directly to a specific kind of American anxiety that nobody else was naming. Number 4. Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Half an hour later, we packed up our things.
The name was borrowed from a Monty Python sketch and gave absolutely no indication of what the music inside would sound like. Toad the Wet Sprocket formed in Santa Barbara, California in 1986 and spent the next decade making earnest guitar-driven alternative rock that connected deeply without ever making much commercial noise.
Of the game, of putting things aside.
All I Want and Walk on the Ocean became genuine radio hits in the early 90s, reaching a wide audience through modern rock stations and MTV. The album Fear, released in 1991, was one of the most well-crafted records of the era, full of doubt and longing in a way that felt honest rather than performed. By the mid-90s, they had quietly faded from the spotlight. Gen X fans who carried them through that decade know exactly what was lost when the airwaves moved on.
Gotta get out of here. Been too long this time and jump back.
Number 3. Dinosaur Jr. Loud does not begin to describe it. Dinosaur Jr. was founded by Jay Mascis in Amherst, Massachusetts in the mid-1980s, and from the beginning, their guitar sound occupied a volume level that seemed physically unreasonable. Mascis's playing was simultaneously distorted beyond recognition and strangely melodic, a contradiction that became the band's entire identity. Early records like You're Living All Over Me and Bug were enormously influential in underground circles, shaping shoegaze and grunge in ways that are well documented but rarely credited publicly. A brief major label run in the early 90s brought them wider exposure, and the song Feel the Pain earned real airplay in 1994. The original lineup fell apart, reformed, and has remained active with remarkable consistency. Among the musicians of their generation, Mascis is spoken of with something close to awe. Number 2. The Replacements.
I got a girl, never gets old. I got a girl, wrinkles and folds. I got a girl, so trouble.
Few bands in American rock history have inspired the kind of passionate, almost grief-stricken devotion that the Replacements still command among their fans. Paul Westerberg and Tommy Stinson led a band from Minneapolis that seemed constitutionally incapable of taking the easy path. Their albums Let It Be and Tim arrived in the mid-1980s as the most emotionally unguarded rock records that generation had heard. The band's live performances were legendary for all the wrong reasons, frequently derailed by intoxication and deliberate self-sabotage at the very moments when a mainstream breakthrough seemed within reach. They were signed to Sire Records and had every structural advantage, yet somehow managed to fail commercially in ways that only deepened their fans' affection. Westerberg's songwriting was simply brilliant. The band officially dissolved in 1991. When they reunited briefly in 2013 and 2015, the audiences that showed up made clear that nothing had ever replaced them. Number 1. Violent Femmes. There is something remarkable about a band that was discovered busking on a sidewalk in Milwaukee and went on to make one of the most enduring debut albums in American music history. Gordon Gano, Brian Ritchie, and Victor DeLorenzo recorded their self-titled first album in 1982 on a budget that was almost nothing, and the result was a collection of songs about teenage longing, frustration, and yearning that felt entirely handmade and completely true. Blister in the Sun and Add It Up became permanent fixtures of the Gen X memory. The album spread mostly through word of mouth over years, passed between friends before streaming made that kind of slow discovery obsolete. The Violent Femmes never replicated the impact of that debut, but they never needed to. They continued performing and recording with evident joy, connecting with new audiences at every turn. For anyone who was 16 in the early to mid-1980s, that first record is not nostalgia. It is something closer to a personal document,